All right, well, here we are, folks. It looks like it's 6 o'clock. So this is the July 19th City Council work session. I will call the meeting to order. Sue, a roll call, please.
First, for the record, Councilor Crowfield is on vacation, so he is excused absence. Councilor McBride.
Here.
Councilor Yarnell Holloman and Lincoln.
Here.
Councilor Martinez Plancarte.
Present.
Mayor Rogers.
Here.
Councilor Bacon.
Here.
Councilor Finley. Mr. Mayor, 6 present.
Here.
All right, well, thank you. All right, next, review of council agenda and meeting. Anything for the business session this evening, folks? No, nothing. One note is if we've got the fireworks ban discussion for later in the work session. If we do decide to do anything with that, we'll have to transfer that to the business session afterwards. So just keep that in mind. All right. Any other council business items? Nope. All right. Seeing none, let's move on. Good evening, Mr. Dodson, from the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, known as the COG.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you. Good to see all the council members here. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you folks. I wish it was in person. That will hopefully be sooner rather than later, but and we'll look forward to that. But I wanted to give a very brief introduction as to what the COG is all about here. A little bit about myself, just 1 minute. I served as a city manager in various cities in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina for 30 years, and then became an executive director for a council of governments below Asheville, North Carolina, before I came out here. So glad to be here, but I do come with a lot of public management experience behind me. I'm actually much younger than I look. I started very early, so I know I look older. That's okay. The COG, though, I think I get to share a screen. Have that ability to do that. So I'm going to pull up a very brief presentation, and we'll go through that. That's all right with y'all. Can everybody see that? And I have left some information for you folks, our annual report at the end of this year. The Council of Governments, I'm just gonna again, be pretty brief on what we do. Some of you may know who we are, but some of you may not. Let's see here, next. We really hone in on 4 programs that we do for you folks, but we can do a lot of things: transportation, community development, business lending, and member services, which between it and community development are our largest. Just for some history, we're one of 4 councils of government in Oregon. Metro is actually a little bit different than the rest of us. They actually have taxing authority and some other authorities given to them by statute. We were formed in 1957 as a regional planning agency, and we're created by an intergovernmental agreement. It's a voluntary group. It's not a regulatory entity. We have no taxing authority. We have that authority that our membership gives us, and those contracts and those agreements that we come up with. We're governed by a board of directors and an executive committee. These are our cities: Marion County, Polk County, Yamhill County, and the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, as well as several special districts, including several in your area that you folks are part of, as well as the majority of cities in all 3 counties are a part of this. There are a couple that are not. The board makeup, which includes your mayor, sits on our board, and they're the governing board, and they create an executive committee, and that's pretty much how we get a lot of things done. So that's just the governance structure and how we came together. Our executive committee happens to be chaired by Sal Peralta of McMinnville and vice chair by Lisa Lino of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. Our other members are Eric Swenson from Woodburn, and our immediate past chair was Jackie Frankie from Chemeketa Community College. These are our primary services: community and economic development, transportation, geographic information systems, business lending, and member services. This is the last fiscal year, but this is more or less how we get our revenues. Reserves and designated looks like a pretty large number, and it is for us, but that's been due to the good work of the membership to try to help us out there. Most of that money, though, I will tell you, is designated for business lending perspectives or projects with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which we'll talk about in a second. But basically, federal money about 25%, 10% from the state, 30% in local revenue. Those are the contracts we do, the services that we provide in member services and community economic development, and then a small percentage, about 3% of member dues. And again, about 33% of the money that goes out the door from us is in transportation planning, business lending services, and community development. We're mostly people. The business lending services, they have a large number. We only have one person in there. Most of that is in the form of loans. So the first big thing that we do is transportation planning and GIS. You folks are not part of the MPO called SCATS, that Metropolitan Planning. That is Salem, Kaiser, and a portion of Polk and Marion. That's defined by federal law. That's probably where we spend a majority of our time doing a lot of the planning, and money flows through that to various projects. But what you folks are a part of specifically is the Mid-Willamette Area Commission on Transportation, MWAC. That boundary includes all three counties, Marion, Polk, Yamhill, as well as specific corridors, 99E, 99W, those kinds of things. But in your area, there are about 5 folks who represent in those various corridors on this. This is staffed by the Oregon Department of Transportation, and we gives technical support to this. So it's kind of between us and ODOT to help support this planning process. But the idea is to provide a forum for that discussion and coordination of those long-range transportation issues. There's no money that flows through that, but there is a lot of planning that goes on in conversation and discussion about various transportation issues. The other thing that we do, and it's one of the things that we do specifically in Yamhill County, as well as various jurisdictions up there, and that is GIS services. We actually have 3 members of our staff who are very well versed in GIS. One of our staff, I'd like to brag a little bit, was able to develop an application for Yamhill County Public Works that when the folks are doing spraying in ditches and in certain places, keeps them from spraying in places that will kill things that help bees and other things necessary for farming. And that was one of those neat little inventions that came out of one of our staff members, and we use it very specifically in Yamhill County. Our other largest one, and the one that you may see the most of when you deal with us, all 3 counties are in what are called an economic development district under the Economic Development Administration guidelines. And out of that division, that is where a lot of our that's where our CEDS, our comprehensive regional plan, is located, which gives access to EDA dollars for our membership, as well as we use those same planning things for USDA dollars and CDBG and other types of state and federal monies that may come through for economic and community development purposes. But some of the specific services we do for you folks are in land use planning, urban renewal, comprehensive plan updates, park inventories, commissioner training, those kinds of things. And then the area that's getting even bigger lately is grants again. And so this is just an outline of all the CEDS, or economic development districts, in the state of Oregon, in which all 3 counties are a part of that. We also do housing rehabilitation services out of that division as well. And that kind of bleeds over into our business lending program. We actually have a separate body called the Valley Development Initiative Board, which has a loan board and also does housing rehabilitation work out of it, CDBG specifically. on behalf of our membership around the region. So one of the other programs that we have that has a large budgetary issue, but it's really about lending, and that is our small business lending loan program, which we've actually interacted with Newberg in the past, McMinnville, other cities, as well as organizations and businesses in your community. Those monies that back that all come from EDA, USDA, SBA, Business Oregon. And we've also helped some jurisdictions, again, like Newberg, administer local revolving loan programs, and also like the City of Independence. Another area that we provide services are member services. And I put this list up here. This list can expand and contract depending on what our membership needs at the time. And so we try to run a lean staff, but we also try to build up margins where we can for you folks and provide services. We do what we call executive level recruitments, although it's more of the recruitment process that we do. We're doing the City of Dundee, for example, the City of Turner, their city manager searches. We also do things like legal services. We actually have an attorney on staff who provides legal services, as well as training, customized training for new counselors, and specifically planning boards, which is an area that we spend a lot of time in. We also provide very specific planning services. I'll say that can sometimes be a member services, but most of the time that's in community and economic development. Some of our future challenges as our members begin to say things to us and respond to us is the areas of HR, developmental services, GIS, especially photo telemetry. Finance is becoming a big thing for some of our members. We had managers in our office last Friday, the administrator luncheon last Friday, where we were talking about ARPA and the planning processes. We actually invited the Government Finance Officers Association out of Washington, D.C. to come in and talk to the managers about some of those things. And those are some of the areas that we are both expanding in, and we will do one-offs. We will also create agreements with our fellow COGs if they have a service that we do not, so that we can make sure that we bring that service in-house to provide those services for you folks. I'm going to stop sharing, give some time for questions and answers. I don't promise to have all the answers, but I'm happy to listen to a question.
All right, folks, questions? Well, Scott, I'll say this first off. I think all of us are delighted to have you out in our part of the world. Your experience and all will be very well used, I'm sure. I just feel bad for you that when you showed up, given COVID, wildfires, ice storms,
Yeah.
Survived most of that. So there you go. But anyway, it looks like Mike's got a question.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.
So it looked like on some of the services that you provide is help with urban growth boundary expansion. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, and
yes,
what would
Mike.
that entail? I mean, what's the cost factor for that, or is it on a sliding scale depending on what we're going to be doing and how big the expansion is going to be, or something like that?
Mike, I'm an economist, so my answer is always it depends. But that framework was actually developed by the board. So we actually have a list of our services and prices attached with those things. Some things we kind of already know the estimated cost for doing an entire project. So we might have those prices set up. Others are hourly rates, depending on the size of the project. We actually are doing a project for you folks where we're helping the city of your city, helping the City of Dundee in planning services. So we have those services, and they may only be 10, 20, 30, maybe 50 hours worth of time over a whole fiscal year, but we'll provide those kinds of services. We find that our smaller towns use us a lot more because they just don't have the staff to do a lot of their planning work. But urban growth boundaries is an area that we do work in, and we have assisted many of our members, and many in the Yamhill County area, specifically in that area.
All right, other questions, folks? No, Scott, I think I've got one. I noticed there may have been a school district or two listed on your member list. And I mean, I can see where some of the services, member services, recruitment, that kind of thing might be good. Do you know what would be the targeted services that you'd provide to school districts, I guess is what I'm asking.
One of the areas that we've kind of excelled at recently is in GIS services, mapping with transit, mapping with the school bus routes. We've done that. The other area that we can actually work outside of our SCAT zone is in the safe routes to school area. We can work outside of our MPO district when it comes to helping communities do safe routes to school. So that's another area. GIS very specifically. Sometimes it's just community development work like writing a grant or administering a grant on behalf of that member that they may need some assistance in. One of the ways to look at us is we're kind of at the margins for you folks. We're there, you folks, we're owned by all of you folks, but we help you at the margins. So it might be some financial background work on filing forms for grants and things like that. So we can do some of those things. Davis-Bacon is another area that we do in construction. So we might get called into a special service district. The Yamhill Soil and Water is part of us, as is the Marion County Soil and Water. We'll do salary surveys for them. Sometimes they just want a third party to help them out. So I think it depends on what's driving them and some of those special districts at the time.
Thank you, but I take it you wouldn't be opposed to a couple more school districts joining you as members, I would guess.
No, I really wouldn't. And the nice thing about it is I came here from one of the states I was in was South Carolina, which is a home rule state like Oregon, and we had a lot of districts. And one of the things that we do, especially in that GIS and that planning and that grant areas, we can really help some of the districts who are trying to provide a specific service, but they need just a little bit of help in grant administration or some of the other things, or even developing plans, helping them go through a public process where they're vetting out ideas for construction projects or capital improvement projects and things like that. So we can engage them at that level too, as well as executive searches and some of those kinds of things. But I think it's pretty wide open, general management services. And that's one of the reasons the board, when they talked to me about coming on board, they wanted me to bring some of that experience of management in and expand that portfolio out. And we did send a survey out to all the administrators, which included special districts, to ask them what kinds of things they were looking for, what kinds of services, what kinds of things we could provide and help them with.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Maybe the next time we're in the room with Newberg School District, we'll casually mention the COG.
Be great.
All right. Jules.
Hi, Scott. Well, thank you for the presentation. I do have a question just regarding like DEI. I'm curious of what the makeup of your board is and or staff that you all have.
I don't know the exact makeup of the board. I would, because those are set positions by our ORS. So it's whoever your city puts on, it's whoever McMinnville puts on, those kinds of things. My observation is that we're pretty evenly split between male and female. That is one observable thing that I can tell you. I don't know the number. Race, ethnicity, and some of those things, I really couldn't give you any breakdowns. I'm proud to say that the board has a desire to increase and expand its idea into DEI as training, how our boards are selected and those kinds of things. So it is something that sits on the front burner of the COG board. And it is something that we will try to strive towards, and it is something they asked us to be part of as we move forward.
All right. Other questions, folks? Well, Scott, I am not seeing any other hands at the moment. So thank you. And, thank you for all the COG does. I know Doug Rux, our community development director, is on the line, who is had many, many years of association, I'm sure, with the COG. So anyway, we thank you greatly for your service. So
Thank you, and we're here to serve. You own us. We're here for you folks, and glad to be here and glad to be in Oregon.
okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, next on your agenda, item 5B, it looks like we're on to the fireworks ban. And let's see, James, are you going to kick us off with this one?
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Mayor Rogers. I appreciate it. Thank you to the council for the time. Just wanted to provide kind of a brief update on the status of the fireworks ban and the declaration of state of emergency, and then also provide or look for opportunity for the council to discuss next steps and how you'd like to proceed. Just as a bit of background or to recap, the council met in an emergency meeting on July 2nd and passed a fireworks ban, also declared a state of emergency in response to the high temperatures and dry conditions. At the July 6th council meeting, that ban and the declaration were both ratified by resolution number 2021-3759. After the emergency meeting on July 2nd, staff was very quick to respond. I'd like to give recognition to Lacey and the community engagement team as they worked very hard to get the word out, sent communications out through flash alerts that were picked up by the Register and the Graphic and OPB and KPTV. They also had several posts, posting notice of the ban on not only the city's website, but also on social media, uploading Mayor Rogers' video, notifying the city of the ban, and then also getting communications out to partner organizations, Chehalem Valley Chamber of Commerce, Taste Newberg, CPRD, and the Newberg Downtown Coalition. There were a collection of calls in response to fireworks in the city that police did respond to. My understanding to date is that there have not been any, and there were not any citations issued. A lot of the response to those calls ended in discussions about the ban. I think that given the kind of short time period from when the ban was passed and put into effect and getting the notice out, there just wasn't a lot of time to get the word out. So a number of residents shared that they didn't know about it. So had some discussions and had some success in getting those individuals to discontinue using fireworks in those instances. As far as next steps are concerned, the way that the ban and the declaration are structured, the declaration is set to expire on August 1st. The ban is set to expire today. So we look to the council as far as how you would like to proceed with respect to each of those items. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have regarding the ban or the declaration. I'm also delighted that Chief Kennedy joined us today for the work session from TVFNR and is available to help out with questions, as well as Captain Ferguson from NDPD and Kezia, of course, can help field inquiries as well.
All right, questions, folks? Well, Chief, I've just got one a little off the subject, but have you recovered from the England-Italy match yet?
I want to make sure you can hear this response first before
Yes,
I give it.
please. I'd like to hear it.
I'd have been more messed up if we took the final and trophy than the way we went out. I've learned to live like that since '66.
Yes.
Thank you for asking.
Yes, of course, of course. Wouldn't have missed the chance. So there we are. All right. Let's see. Well, I'll start off. Chief, we heard that there were no fires in Newberg. Is that true? Do we know, or was there any significant difference in a prior year?
Yeah, what I can report back to you is from, I think we do it from the 3rd through the 5th. We compare fireworks year to year. And what I can say is we are very happy with the results, with how the weekend went. I know this year we had no firework-related fires in Newberg or the surrounding area. Throughout the fire district, we had 9 fires, and as significantly, 0 property damage from those 9 fires, compared to 2020, where we had 15 firework-related fires and about $150,000 worth of damage. So we're all too happy with how it went. Call volume is still up, which we expect, because again, when we talked about this when we last met, is people are out, people are about. That causes 911 calls. We expected that, but we didn't have to go to any additional resources than we deployed that weekend. And as far as fireworks go, we're very happy with how it went. It was very successful for us.
Well, thank you. And let's see, Captain Ferguson, was that largely your review of the weekend as well?
Yeah, that's first, thanks for having me. But yes, living here and seeing years past and working the 4th of July as patrol, I would say that the events I witnessed, at least not working, were definitely reduced leading up to the 4th. I know Stephanie lives in the Greens. It seemed to be a week-long event prior to this year where people would be lighting off fireworks leading up to the 4th. We didn't see a lot of that. I think the numbers were issued that we took 54 complaints that night, 6 of which were in the county. And of the contacts we made with people, no one was aware of the ban, and they complied with us trying to tell them to stop and explaining why. So I would say that our calls were definitely down from years past, yes.
Well, thank you. Other questions, folks, for any of our panelists? Let's see. All right, Stephanie.
I just wanted to say thank you to the fire department and the police department, because it is true. It was definitely reduced, especially in my neighborhood. We really appreciate that you guys took it seriously and that it sort of ended up on a positive note. So really thank you for doing all that work, because I know that it was last minute and it was kind of a scramble to make sure that everything was in place. But I know the word got out really, really quickly, and it sounds like the police department did a good job responding. And I'm also, I have to say, glad to hear that there were no citations, because I think, you know, the spirit of it was just asking people not to do it, but not necessarily being punitive. And so I really appreciate that. So thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, well, how's about this? I'll ask you, Chief and Captain, you know, so right now it expires today, right? And yet I know we're still very much in a fire danger period and likely to be. If you had your choice, would you continue this while we are still under a forest fire? I think it's a forest fire emergency, right? Declared by the governor. So if you had your choice, would you extend it?
This is Captain Ferguson. I'll go first. I absolutely would. That would be my opinion. There's just so much fuel on the ground all around us. And to put it out there, we've taken probably about 7 fire calls. TVF and R has taken, we've assisted, and they look like potentially man-made down on the south end of town by the skate park, and then also over by the boat landing. So there's someone out there that's trying to start something. So if it was up to me, I would vote to extend it.
And I know, Mr. Mayor and Council, for us, it's a bit hard because, again, we don't have the authority. But what I can tell you is nothing's changed since pre-July 4th. The weather conditions haven't changed. We don't expect them to change. The danger only grows throughout the summer. Now, none of the other cities, now I haven't tracked them as closely, but of the other cities that banned them within the fire district, I don't know that any's extended them, just to be on the forefront. But then again, I also haven't tracked that either. Portland has gone until further notice with their notification. So we would certainly be supportive no matter what you choose. But again, nothing's changed for us. And again, we don't have the data package because, again, we only have to worry about fireworks over this one particular weekend. We don't see that as a high percentage that we need to deal with outside of that July 4th season. So again, we don't, and you don't either. None of the cities we have around us have the information to what's best to do. That's why it is such a hard decision to make. Because again, this is the first time we've done it. So we're very supportive of you. We thank the partnership of what you did in Newberg and all the other cities to make this happen. It was very successful.
Thank you. Stephanie.
This question is for James. So if we decided that we were going to go ahead and do that, what happens with like the Old Fashioned Festival fireworks? Can we exclude something like that that's a professional festival, one off kind of a thing, or does that include, and how does that look? So I guess legally, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and we certainly can craft the authority to exclude that, professional shows and shows like the Old Fashioned Festival. That would be different language than what we used in the resolution that was ratified on the 6th, but we certainly could do that.
Can I add, if it's okay, can I add something to that? That's a wonderful question.
Yep.
So Councilor Finley, just as you're probably aware that there are 3 entities that get to review professional firework display shows, and we are all about the public getting out of the kind of the consumer side this year and getting more into the personal use of fireworks and getting into go to a professional show. We get to review the show for safety aspects, law enforcement does for their safety aspects, and then also the Oregon State Fire Marshal. So all 3 have to sign off, and I believe for the Old Fashioned Festival, it's currently signed off for. Now, we also do an added precaution as the local fire jurisdiction in that on Saturday, we send our in-house professional firework person, Deputy Fire Marshal Control, to review the site, make sure it's okay, to work closely with the operators. They are professional. We've already checked that out through the OSFM, et cetera. But then also if something changes, adds to that. Say, for instance, the one we go to is the weather. So all of a sudden we have a wind event. That changes the approval process for that. And then we can call it off based on the site's not prep, or there's an added dimension that's out of our control and your control. So we still have that process to go to, but the added benefit too is we do want to support people going to professional shows. And so there are ways you can do that. West Lynn also had 2 fireworks shows, one on over the 4th weekend. And last weekend, they have to have their old time fair where they had a fireworks show over the Willamette. But again, it went through the review process. We felt safe with it. So did law enforcement. So did OSFM. So there's that added benefit to the professional shows. But again, that's another consideration, as you said.
All right. Thank you. Captain Ferguson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm not sure we talked about this amongst ourselves, but it's at the Mill District, and that's technically in the county. So I don't know if that would change anything either, if they change what they wanted to do. But of course, we would be the ones affected if something were to go wrong. But it's a county property.
Does anybody know? Are we planning on people at Rennie Field to watch the fireworks, or where is that going to happen? Just sort of anybody know? I'm not sure. Anyway, all right.
As you can see it from a lot of different areas, but they don't.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions for folks? All right. Well, I have one for you. Should we add this as an item? It would be 8D on new business. If you want to do that, thumbs up to add. Looks like we got it. Okay. All righty then. We will add that to tonight's work session. Again, to everyone, thank you so much. Chief, thank you. Captain, thanks. James, right? Kezia, everybody, thank you so much. And you two on frontline support, stay safe out there. Chief, I'll buy you a beer the next time I see you so we can commiserate, right? So there you go. All right. Otherwise, I think that's it. Unless anybody's got anything else for work session,
Please just tell all the firefighters that we're so grateful for for doing and entering into fire season. If there's anything we can do to support from a city level, please let us know as that comes about.
Thank you for that, Councillor. We have an amazing partnership with the river in the surrounding area. Anything, and we have a great partnership with your leadership team on promoting. I mean, because around wildfires, it all has to do with prevention of, which includes education and outreach, and the city helps us greatly with that, and vice versa. So we're all too ecstatic to partner with the city on that. Thank you.
All righty. Well, all right then. With that, thank you all very much. And for those who are off the call, have a nice evening. And the rest of us will be back here at 7 o'clock for the business session. Just mute and stop your video, and we'll see you back here in a few minutes. Yep. All right. Good evening, everyone. This is City Council business session for July 19th. This meeting is now called to order. There is an agenda in Spanish that you can find on the city's website. A roll call, please, Sue.
Mr. Mayor, please note for the record, Councilor Cofield will not be present this evening as he is on vacation. Councilor McBride,
Here.
Councilor Yarnell Holloman,
Here.
Councilor Martinez Plancarte,
Here.
Mayor Rogers,
Here.
Councilor Bacon,
Here.
Councilor Finley.
Here.
All right, the Pledge of Allegiance, please. So you can see my flag. There it is, one flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There we go. All righty, well, thank you. And now it is my great pleasure to have the initial presentation of the evening, Newberg Downtown Coalition Downtown Enhancement Community Support Grant Final Report. I see that we've got Polly Peterson, Molly Olson to give us this report, and I believe Doug as well. So good evening, all.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here.
Well, Mayor, I'm going to turn this over to Polly and Molly. It's their report, their information. We have the RCA that gave you a little bit of background, but there was a written report that they put together that covered the full time span of the grant. So this is their final closeout report. So Polly?
Yes. Well, thank you. I came in on January of this year. So after the grant had been spended and most of it had been spent. And I wrote up the report based on notes that I had from Molly and things that I also observed in these last 6 months. Molly, do you want to add in at this point kind of what we did as a coalition, how we used this grant money, and how we helped the businesses, downtown businesses in Newberg during specifically the time of COVID, which is where this grant covered that time span?
Yeah, in fact, when we got the note saying needed a final report, I'm like, that was forever ago. Isn't it all done or something? So how time flies. I think what I wanted to say, and Polly, if you have the write-up and you can kind of go through the highlights of things, but the one thing I wanted to say was that it was a critical time in NDC's life. And that $5,000 grant, matching grant, is what allowed NDC to continue to exist. So I want to take pride in the work that we got done, of course, but it would not have happened without that grant. So money well spent, I think, but if Polly, I wanted a chance to say thank you for that. But if Polly wanted to go through the stuff, that would be great.
I won't read all through it, but I do want to talk about the 3 goals that were highlighted and talk a little bit about how we met those goals. The first one was active participation in developing the urban renewal plan and building strong support for that plan based on positive results for the growth and vitality of downtown. And so Molly actually worked very hard on this, not only during her time as the executive director of the Newberg Downtown Coalition, but since then. And I would say that her passion for this and being involved in the infrastructure and the deep understanding of the importance of an urban renewal type of funding and what it's going to do for a community is has been very helpful. She has spoken to our board and to anybody who would call in and listen, which were not very many, but the ones that did heard a good deal. She also went door to door, specifically talking to people who would be impacted by some of the things that were coming through with this, and talking one-on-one and answering any questions. So thank you, Molly, for that.
You should thank Doug. Yeah, you should thank Doug for putting up with my nitpicking questions and so on. Yes.
Yes, yes. Any questions about goal number 1? Okay. Goal number 2, drive the economic development of Newberg through active participation in NED's committee and focus on urban renewal and downtown parking. As I spoke before, big presence in urban renewal. Downtown parking also was one of those goals that kind of had to get changed, not necessarily sidelined, but re-articulated because of COVID, that picked up again now that there is more traffic through town, specifically people who are shopping and visiting downtown, people going back to work into their offices when they were working remotely. And so, Molly, could you talk a little bit more about what we have done up to this point as part of this downtown parking group and what we're going to do in the near future?
Yeah, so the parking work group is composed of, we did have a planning rep. We're going to work on fixing that. Doug can loan us someone for an hour a month. But it's a lot of the people in downtown. And the concept was that we would try to understand how to best make use of the parking we have first, because as we are not doing enforcement, we don't have turnover, we're not making the best use of our parking, that we would help Doug with thoughts on when the parking study should be done. The last one was done 5 years ago. It was done on a Wednesday in April, and the team talked about when would we want to have it, and would we want to have it on a Wednesday when the market was there, so that we had a record both of a regular day and an event night, so that we could understand parking. We also did a walking tour of parking, and that was really fun. We offered free coffee to anyone who could see a sign pointing to our public parking lots. Needless to say, I did not have to buy the coffee. But so there are things that we can do to make better use of the parking we have. We want to do that, but then we also want to engage, and we did put money in the urban renewal plan, thanks to Doug, for 2 surface parking lots, which we will not see for years, right? But this is how you build infrastructure. You get it in the plan and you get moving. And then the last thing we're going to do prior to doing the parking study is actually do a survey of citizens of Newberg and ask our merchants to do a survey, a very simple survey of people who visit. It could be as simple as 2 jars and a bucket of beans, and say, I had no trouble finding parking. You need to fix your parking problem, and have people put a bean in whichever one is right. So you're not asking customers to fill out surveys, but we are asking residents of Newberg and merchants in downtown to help us understand how they see parking. So we're trying to approach it holistically and not just say add more parking lots. I do think, as we tried to park over near Reddickwood Thursday at 11, and had to park in the 2nd Street parking lot where there were 8 spots left, that we might have a parking problem, but we need to do the study to find out. So that's kind of the parking study. On the NEDs and economic development, I think what I would say is coming of COVID really changed our focus. So our focus became very clearly try to help the businesses survive, whatever that meant. So we did the farmers market to bring people downtown, and the restaurants doing takeout, handing out lists, handing out masks and sanitizer, taking masks out to the wineries, especially during the fire. What a crazy year last year was. So the focus on economic development, I think Doug can speak to, is probably revitalized now that we're actually we have an urban renewal plan and we don't have a pandemic raging. So anything else, Polly, you can think of, or Josh?
No. Any questions or comments about those, about goal number 2? So goal number 2 is continue developing diverse downtown business inventory. And underneath this one, it talks about a bit of what Molly did specifically and the NDC during the COVID relief, as COVID relief. She secured a grant for generators and tents. She was diligent about sending out any information about loans or grants through the government or other agencies. I have continued to do that as well. And so has Josh, and Taste Newberg has done that as well. The other things that we partnered with Taste Newberg to do kind of shift the focus from bringing tourists into Newberg and highlighting what Newberg still can offer to the people who are living here. So advertising the 12 shops of Christmas, and as well as helping with the market, the Wednesday market, which she rebranded and relocated and revitalized.
with our CPRD partners, by the way.
Correct.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
helpful. Yeah, Erin Harrington and the CPRD has been wonderful. Moving forward, some of the things that we're looking at doing now to help bring vitality to the downtown is going to be starting at First Fridays with the merchant group. That had to kind of be sidelined because of COVID, but on August 6th from 5 to 8, new time, we're going to be opening First Fridays again. It is a First Fridays art walk. It's been merged together, and trying to figure out how to do that, how to reopen that, how to brand that, and bring people to the downtown for the Friday parties that we used to have and know and love. We are also working on a downtown gift card that would help bring fun, and that is something that I hear that you have heard about, and I'm excited about, and about funding that and helping the NDC work with that, and bringing in funds for the downtown businesses, actually Newberg businesses, not just downtown, but locally owned businesses. We also are continuing to think about how to help our individual businesses. For example, just today during our board meeting, word on the street, one of our business owners, Jennifer Sitter from Pulp and Circumstance, was talking to Newberg Music, the Newberg Music Shop, and the owner there was describing how hard it is to get parts. They can't sell hardly anything because of the problem with getting parts. And the thing that she noted is that the more that the business is specialized, the harder it is right now for them to recover. She can not have some items, but she can fill the shelves with some other ones that she can find. But if you're in the business of selling musical instruments and you can't get those made, then that's going to be detrimental in a bigger way to your business. So we were thinking about how do we help the businesses that are really specifically suffering now in the kind of the reopening. And so that's just something that I want to leave to you, that one of the ways is infusing some money with these downtown gift cards, but there's other things that we can be doing and wanting to have conversations about. And that's my report. Doug, do you have something to add to that?
No, Polly, I don't. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Molly, how about you?
I'm good.
Polly, I did, after the meeting this morning, I did check with our economic development folks, and nobody seems to know much about what's going on with either Voodoo Martini or with First Street. So those are ones to keep an eye on, all of us. So
yeah.
We can all...
I did. Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's not good. I mean, I'm glad you keep an eye on that, because I would like to know. I mean, we had heard whether or not is the building selling, or is it just the business, or are they just going to sit there? So if anybody hears anything, that would be great. I know that in past, Molly has tried really hard to contact some of those owners, and and I haven't been as put out as much of an effort as I probably could, so I could try to do that some more.
All right, any questions for Polly, Molly, or Doug, folks? All righty. Well, thank you all for all of your good
Incredible
work.
work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Molly,
Thank
thank you
you.
for getting us through. And Polly, thank you for continuing it on.
Picking up the ball and running.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's see, after Molly comes Polly, what's next, you figure?
I
Holly.
think Holly.
Definitely Holly.
Holly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But we're already talking about next, Rick. Anyway,
No,
sorry.
I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean
No,
it that
I
way.
know.
No,
I'm
no, I
just
didn't
kidding.
mean it that.
Anyway, thank you so much for letting
Okay.
us present and for all the support that we get from you. We really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
guys.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Thank you so
Mhm.
much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, on next on our agenda, item 4B, Chehalem Valley Chamber of Commerce Quarter 4 Visitor Center Report. Good evening, Josh.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Hello, City Council. I'll keep it nice and short this week or this month or this quarter. Sorry. We've had an uptick in visitors, which is good. It's still not nearly where we were, years ago, but as you can tell, quarter 4, we're having more walk-ins and we're holding steady about the email and the phone requests, mostly folks calling in to ask where we are and if we can send them a map or directions on how to get to Newberg. So we have been shipping out maps and the Yamhill Valley Visitors Guide that came to us from the News Register and some other interesting collateral and documents that we have to ship out to interested visitors. So mostly, I would just say we've seen more people coming in, more people interested in our area. Sorry, I've got 2 dogs here that are interested in getting in my lap right now too. And that's sort of where we're at with the visitor center. Slightly better and holding steady in other departments, but not getting worse in anything.
Hey, folks, any questions for Josh? Can't see y'all necessarily, so if you do, speak up. Well, Josh, is the executive director search still going on, or what's happened with that?
Yeah, so I mean, just to be completely transparent, today I sent in my resignation letter to the Chamber of Commerce for my interim executive position. So that way they can focus on hiring somebody to really fill in that position. I gave 4 weeks plus a couple of flexible weeks. And I'm going to be shifting over to the private sector, but making myself available to share any tribal knowledge I might have. Patty Music is also retiring from the Chamber of Commerce. So there's going to be a really good opportunity for the Chamber to reset completely and have no bad habits and start from scratch.
I'm sure there were no bad habits that you or either Patty or you were involved with, so I know that for sure. But
no, but I think if I worked for the previous CEO, and the previous CEO learned from other people who had so this is definitely a clean break from the past and a good chance for the new executive director to start fresh with City Council and really get to know the community.
Now, Josh, will you be staying in town, I hope?
Yeah, right now I'm in the middle of a 4 to 6 week background check on a position with a financial institution in Newberg. Once that background check goes through, I'll publicly let everybody know where I'll be. But until it goes through, I'm just gonna hold tight.
Sure. Well, our fingers are crossed for you. That's great. It's great that you're staying in the Berg. So.
I love it.
Yeah, and then thank you for all your service. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's been a decidedly challenging time. I can safely say that. So thank you for carrying it through. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jules, I did want to give you a shout out. If you would, we're now headed into planning for month 3 of our Latino partnership with the Oregon Community Foundation. And certainly hope we can get that date out to you ahead of time and have see you at the next meeting. So you should expect an email from Arturo Vargas, and we'll get you in the group. Thank you.
All right, good stuff. Anything else for Josh? All right. Again, thank you so much, my friend. And same thing. Anything we can do, you please don't ever hesitate to let us know how we can do better. So thanks, Josh. All right, next on the agenda, our Assistant City Manager, Kezia Warner, with the City Manager's Report. Good evening, Kezia.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, members of the public. Kezia Warner, Assistant City Manager. I'm filling in for Dan Weinheimer, who is out this week. And so I'll be providing a curated list of city updates, and he will have a more full list that he'll post on the website. So a couple updates related to the library. Our library is fully open with expanded hours, open every night until 6 or 8 o'clock. The library is running 2 or 3 events per week. We're planning adult programming to return to normal in August. Our children's events are still entirely outdoors due to the fact that kids 12 and younger can't get vaccinated yet. The library experienced a 9% increase in circulation and a 25% increase in physical visits in June as compared to the month of May. And we're forecasting an even busier July. The curbside services have been continuing on Friday afternoons, and this feature is probably going to be permanent if the demand continues. On July 29th, the library will be supporting Unidos to host a large vaccination event aimed at Spanish-speaking members of our community. The event is Una Noche de Cultura and will feature live music, food vendors, on-site Spanish interpreters, and Providence medical staff will provide the vaccinations. Additionally, Azul, our summer reading mascot owl, continues to make the rounds of our local businesses and sneak appearances at the library, so be on the lookout for him around town. The Newberg Library continues to promote a new self-checkout application, the first of its kind to be launched in the state of Oregon. This app enables our patrons to check out their items without staff assistance and without people having to wait in line to check out materials. So that's pretty exciting, kind of groundbreaking. In the world of community development, land use has been very busy with annexations related to the Riverfront Master Plan and applications for accessory dwelling units, vacation rentals, and design review. Development code language is being prepared for the West End Mill District downtown. City Council's continuing discussions on the urban growth boundary expansion. The urban renewal plan and report is in the confer process with the taxing districts, and comments are due July 26th. The city continues with the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners on their resolution to approve the plan, and the next meeting is July 29th. The Workforce Housing Consortium continues to meet to develop a project in Newberg. The city's received notice of a conditional award for a $500,000 community development block grant award for repairs to manufactured homes in manufactured home parks. And the Affordable Housing Commission will be reviewing a grant request as part of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund notice of funding availability at their meeting in July. As far as just sort of data points about activity, in May, the building division issued 102 permits, conducted 70 plan reviews, and conducted 463 inspections in Newberg. Staff is continuing to work on the potential new Dundee Elementary School in Dundee. And the Mid-Valley Willamette Council of Governments, which we heard from earlier, is assisting with us, the city's current planning activities during our staffing transitions. Next, I'm moving to human resources. And recruitments this year are on pace to double that of last year, 2020. A trend that we are experiencing is that we need to leave positions open longer or reopen our recruitments to get enough qualified candidates. This is a result of our market of being one of employees' choice and not of employers' choice. And this is common across industries. It's not unique to us, but we're experiencing difficulty in getting sufficient numbers of qualified candidates. So one of the approaches that we're taking is we're doing more extensive outreach efforts, relying upon specialized industry organizations and websites, and considering different benefits that would make our recruitments more attractive. Another update internally is that we have hired a new finance manager for the city. We hired Katie Strode. She started work on July 7th, and she comes from a financial auditing and accounting background. Most recently, she's been a senior accountant for the Park Rose School District, and we're super excited to have her on board. I'll put a plug in for our adopted budget, the fiscal year 2020, 21, 22 adopted budget is now posted on the city's website and available to the public. And last but not least, a couple updates on Public Works. As many of you know, the contractor for Crestview Crossing hit the gas line last Thursday afternoon, which created some community and traffic issues. Northwest Natural is investigating the situation further. Additionally, the solar farm is under construction. Pavement rehabilitation and the sidewalks at Scott Levitt Park are out to bid and should start construction in the next couple of months. And not surprisingly, our current water demand is running above average. So with that, I will wrap it up. And if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions, anyone? Just one comment about Crestview Crossing. Over the weekend, I did get a few comments, a few questions about what had happened, why, and all of that, and was assured, but Russ Thomas did say that if there was found fault, that there is an investigation that goes on. I did not know this, but if there's an investigation and fault is found, there could be fines for this kind of thing. And I see that Carnes nodding that this it can. So for whoever's listening out there who might have that question, but it's not an immediate thing, I don't think. I think it's would take a while, but anyway. So just for whoever's listening. All right, anything else for Kezia, folks? All right, Kezia, thank you so much. That's great. Sue, it looks like we did not have any public comments as of 2:30 today. Has that changed? Nope. All right.
Everybody's out barbecuing.
Who are out there, do not forget, you can always make comments here at our meetings that are at the first and third Mondays of every month. And to do so, speak to our city recorder, Sue Ryan, and she will get you in the right place, either verbally or you can do it by written comment as well. All right, moving then on to the consent calendar, item 7A, or item 7. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent calendar.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
Looks like I got Denise, I think. Denise for the second, Stephanie with the motion. All in favor signify by raising your left hands. All right, so there we go. Consent calendar passes unanimously. All right, we're on to now new business. Items 8A, 8B, and 8C are all Mr. Doug Rux, our Community Development Director. Good evening, Doug. The first, 8A, is a resolution initiating an amendment to Newberg Municipal Code. And I will leave the description at that.
Thank you, Mayor. We don't have Bryce tonight to say it's another Doug show, but I apologize. We just have lots of stuff to bring forward to you. So this is a request to initiate a development code amendment. In 2019, the legislature passed House Bill 2306, which relates to substantial completion of residential subdivisions. We currently have a definition of substantial completion in our development code, but it does not align with the new state law. So we have been engaged with legal counsel in developing language and proper forms and so forth over the course of the last month plus. As soon as we get that information finalized, then I need to incorporate that into the development code. In the interim, once we get all of the forms and so forth put together, we'll be operating under a policy for substantial completion until we get the code amendments completed. As we've shared with council before, when we initiate these development code amendments, you're just initiating the process. Staff will write the appropriate code language. We will then take that to the Planning Commission for a public hearing, and then it'll come back to the City Council for a public hearing for your consideration. So staff's recommendation on this one is to adopt Resolution 2021-3755.
Oh, all right. Any questions, folks, for Mr. Rux? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I can make a motion.
Thank you, Denise.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2021-3755.
And a second. Jules with a second. Denise with a motion, Jules with a second. All right, any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your left hands. And well, at least you can let us know. Let's see, Elise? Can we put it as abstained? I guess. All right. Yeah, we good with that? Sue?
You can abstain, Mayor Rogers. Yep.
Okay. All right. So Elise abstains from that one. Let's move next on to item 8B. And this is a resolution accepting the 2021 Newberg Housing Needs Analysis and the 2021 Newberg Housing Strategy Report. Mr. Rux.
Thank you, Mayor. Doug Rux again. Sue, how's the PowerPoint for this one, please? Okay, so as the mayor indicated, this is a resolution for the June of 2021 housing needs analysis. Next slide. So you may be asking, why are we doing this? Again, haven't we touched this? Yes, we have. So in June of 2019, we adopted the housing needs analysis. And subsequent to that, then we had a new population number that came in. And so we had to go back and update our housing needs analysis. And so that was back in front of you with the February of 2021 version, which you accepted by resolution. Next slide. So what has changed since then? Well, House Bill 2001. So House Bill 2001, which is dealing with duplexes, triplexes, quads, cottage clusters, and townhomes. There was a provision in the administrative rule identifying an allocation of 3% of future housing towards those particular housing types. We were in the middle of doing the duplex work already. We had already accepted the earlier version of the 2021 housing needs analysis. So I had conversations with DLCD staff, and they had indicated that the 3% was not required at this time in our housing needs analysis, but it would be required in a future update, which would occur in 8 years on our housing needs analysis. Next slide. So with that 3%, the question came up, should we include it? And so we had the guidance from DLCD, but we also had guidance and comments that came in from citizens who participated in development of the 2021 housing needs analysis. And so after consideration of all of that, I thought it would be best to include that 3%. It was equates to about 57 to 58 additional dwelling units. And so the city manager and I talked about it, and we agreed, yeah, it would be good. It would respond to comments that we had heard when we were developing the 2021 version. So next slide. So here's what we had in March when this came before you. We had a surplus of 31 acres of low density residential land, and we had deficits in our medium density of 37 acres and high density of 44 acres. Next slide. With including the middle housing provisions, what we have is a surplus of 35 acres. So a difference of 4. Our medium density, we have a deficit of 34 acres. So that gave us a difference of 3 acres, and our high density residential stayed the same. So I had the consultants go back, and all of these changes, as noted in your RCA, are in chapter 6, where we updated the necessary tables. Next slide. Why are we bringing back the housing strategy? And that is because it's a companion piece to the housing needs analysis. So we thought to keep that continuity that we would request that the council accept, or through this resolution, both the updated revised housing needs analysis and the housing strategy. There were no changes that occurred to the housing strategy with the incorporation of the HB 2001 provisions. Next slide is basically see if you have any questions. Thanks, Sue. You can shut off the PowerPoint.
All right, folks, there's your cue. Any questions? Not seeing any. So how's about a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution number 2021-3752.
Okay.
Second.
All right. And do we have, and Denise with a second. All right. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor of resolution 2021-3752 signify by raising your left hands. And that's unanimous, Sue. All righty. Thank you all very much. Moving on. We're now the direction on the urban growth boundary expansion, item 8C. Mr. Rux.
Thank you, Mayor. Sue will pull up the PowerPoint. Okay. So this is the third in our series of conversations about urban growth boundary expansion. Some of it we've gone through before, so I will go through that quickly, but we do have some questions I think that will set the stage for the discussion this evening. So next slide. So there are 6 questions that are being proposed. 1, do you want to direct staff to initiate a UGB process with the Department of Land Conservation and Development? Question number 2, do you want staff to incorporate those relevant portions of the housing needs analysis into our comp plan under section 5, which is the land need and supply? The third is, do you want staff to incorporate the relevant sections of the EOA into the comp plan, again, in chapter 5 under the land need and supply? And I've listed out in the slide some subtables that go along with that. Next slide. The fourth question, similar to the numbers 2 and 3, is do you want us to incorporate the relevant sections of the public, semi-public land need analysis into the comp plan, again, in chapter 5 under the land need and supply? Then there's another portion of the comp plans. Do you want us to update the comp plan section 4 land need supply? And there's a summary land needs table that would need to be incorporated. And that table integrates all 3 elements, the housing, the economic, and the public, semi-public. And of course, that 6th question, which is kind of the focus of tonight, is what, if any, efficiency measures would you like staff to consider as we go through that UGB process? So Sue, next slide. So this is one where you've seen before. This is our comp plan map. The different colors, the yellows are residential, the reds are the commercial, the blues are the industrial, and the greens are those public, semi-public, and quasi-public lands. Next slide. This is the zoning map, so it's the companion to the comprehensive plan map. So the color coding scheme is very similar, except for here you'll see areas that are hatched in brown, which are lands that are not within the current city limits, but within our UGB. And then there's some green hatched areas for urban reserve areas. Next slide. This was the map we've shown you before on our vacant and partially vacant residential lands. And as you can see, we have some over on the left-hand side, which is up off Chehalem Drive. You've got the Springbrook Master Plan area off of Mountain View and Springbrook. And then you got a little smattering of some other vacant residential areas kind of off of the southeast and down in the riverfront area. Next slide. This map is, because of the comp plan map is a little busy. These are urban reserve areas that we have today. So we have the North Hills up on the north part of town. We got the Clemic Lane off of 99. We got the South Springbrook area off of Springbrook. And then we've got the Winooski Road area down off of Highway 219. Next slide. So these are the lands I've showed you before that have been acquired by ODOT as part of phase 2 of the bypass. Some of them are in urban reserve areas. Some of it is in our existing urban growth boundary, and some of it is in lands that are outside our urban growth boundary. Next slide. This was our commercial inventory from our EOA of what we have for vacant and partially vacant. And again, you can see some of that exists up in the Springbrook property areas. There's a little bit up in the ADEC campus, some off of Mountain View and College, was again part of the Springbrook master plan. The red up off of Highway 99, and we were talking about that earlier, Crestview Crossing. So that is all under development, but at the time we did the EOA, it was considered vacant. We got the hospital, and there's some expansion capabilities there. And then we've got some smattering of some industrial that you can see this kind of in the blue. Of course, we've got Sportsman's Air Park, which is the bigger green area down towards the lower bottom of the slide. Next slide. This is probably the most important of all of the maps here. And so this came out of our work we did in the simplified UGB method. And so the dark brown areas are resource lands. And so those are lands with class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 soils. The light yellow areas are exception lands. That means the county took goal exceptions to those when they were putting together their comprehensive plan. The red shaped areas are landslide areas. And so that information comes directly from Dogami. So what you can see is we've got a lot of resource lands, and we've got some landslide area lands up against our existing urban growth boundary. And then we've got a smattering, which is more on the west side, where we have exception lands off of Highway 99 and Highway 240. Next slide. So in our conversation we had on May 17th, some of the questions that came back was, what are other cities doing? We shared that. Lafayette did a UGB, McMinnville did an urban growth boundary expansion. We had some conversation about around the hospital, McClemick Lane, that URA, and possibly for other medical type uses in the future. We talked about our consultants, and Councilor McBride brought that question up in work session to the COG. And they do provide those kind of services. And yes, there are consultants out there who do that. We talked about the history from prior UGB and URA expansion attempts. We talked about challenges on upzoning, which is a lot of that is kind of the not in my backyard approach. You're not wanting to have multifamily approximate or adjacent to single family. And then there's a lot of process to go through with those as well, but they're all doable. And then we talked about where our industrial lands are at. And so these next 3 slides are going to kind of further hone in. So Sue, next one. So I've identified here where our vacant industrial is. So the mill site is one of those. We got another one down off of Winooski and Sandoz. We got some around the airport, not the airport proper itself, but really off of Industrial Parkway. And then a few parcels that are up off of Hancock Street. Next slide. Then we up along the railroad tracks, there's only one, and that's down on 3rd Street, down by the Public Works Maintenance Yard. There's one vacant parcel. Next slide. And then we've got some area up north, and some of that, most of that is part of the Springbrook Master Plan area, that Springbrook District employment. But then there's another parcel over on the ADEC campus, and then a couple of parcels down off of Alice Way. From there, we went back to the Planning Commission, had a conversation with them. So the next few slides are going to run through that. So they'd indicated we need some UGB expansion based upon what the numbers are showing, both for residential and for employment lands, i.e. the industrial side. Planning Commission members said, well, we really need to stay out of any landslide areas. So that goes back to the map I showed you a little bit ago. There was a question about a library annex and a post office annex out near the hospital. Planning Commission noted that we've needed a UGB expansion for a number of years already. And they commented about, the potential for industrial down off of Highway 219 area. Next slide. They also commented about what about residential out along the Highway 240. So there is some exception land areas out there. They noted that the North Hills URA would be challenging because it is hilly and not flat, and industry is looking for those parcels that are less than 7% slope. They also indicated that if you're trying to create affordable housing, that North Hills URA may be a challenge because it's going to be a little more expensive to build on. They talked about what about east of the Greens and that area. And that was more under the context of proximity to wastewater and water infrastructure that is in the area. And then we talked about building height, and that was more along the lines of multifamily. Instead of having the height limits we got now, which is basically 3 stories, could that be increased to go up to 4 to 5 stories in height? Next slide. Finally, at their meeting on June 10th, they talked about allowing time for the downtown area to catch up. And this is more along the 2nd Street and get those multi-story, multifamily buildings in place. They did note that from their perspective is not having industrial next to residential, so it reduces those conflicts. And they were interested in kind of that medical node around the hospital in the urban reserve area called Clinic. Next slide. Then we came back to City Council. On June 21st, we shared the information that we received from the Planning Commission. And the question from the council that night was, do we need to do this as a combination, or can they be separated? And my suggestion is do it as a combination. There was discussion about clustering industrial. Of course, our industrial area is down in the southeast quadrant of town predominantly, other than that along the railroad line. There was some feedback about not having a big desire to 4 to 5 story buildings. So that was a little bit different than what the Planning Commission had talked about. Again, there was the discussion about some future medical area around the hospital. That would be that Clinic URA. And a follow-up on an earlier question from the council's first discussion was, consultant services, and yes, those are out there. So then we went back to the Planning Commission on July 8th and talked about efficiency measures. And so in your staff report outlined 13 potential efficiency measures. And so again, that got to issues of increasing building height, potentially creating a new multifamily zone, something that's higher than the target density of 16.5. We talked about reducing lot sizes and shared at that meeting is that the Sue, next slide, please. Is that at the meeting, next one, talking a little faster than I am. Go ahead, one more. Is that they, it gets to be a little bit challenging on the structure height and height of buildings, and do you stair step them back? Does it modify and change setbacks or not? We talked about parking standards. We talked about transferring density out of stream corridors. Our provisions don't allow you to fully transfer that density out. You only get a percentage. We talked or identify potential to increase the number of lots that can be accessed off of a private drive aisle in residential. Currently that's 4. Could it be increased to 5, or could it be increased to 6? I mentioned the setbacks. Short-term rental regulations is something that keeps coming up, as we are seeing more inquiries about vacation rentals. Talked about establishing minimum density standards. It's talked about street widths and that right-of-way to right-of-way width and the curb to curb width. Could those be modified? And then we talked about efficiency dwelling units and potentially changing that threshold and increasing that size as it relates to SDCs. And so those were the 13, those are listed in your report. And the feedback we got was they really weren't, the Planning Commission really wasn't supportive in a new higher density residential zone. They thought we do need to go up in the multifamily structure height. And the question would be, is 4 the right number? Is 5 the right number? They talked about efficiency units and thought that that might be something where we've got, if you're under 500 square feet in size now, you're considered an efficiency unit and you pay a reduced amount in your SDCs, maybe that number could be increased. Some of the community inquiries would be, could that go up to 800 square feet? There was a comment about people don't want to live in a rabbit hole. That's kind of gets to that whole density. One thing Oregonians love is their open space and protecting farm and forest lands, but they also don't like to have the density next to them. This artificial supply limit was brought up by the Planning Commission, and that really is the constraint of the urban growth boundary itself. They indicated again that the UGB needs to be expanded. And then they talked about housing on religious institution properties. And there's already a bill that was passed by the legislature. We've had some conversation with some of the churches. We do have some development code regulation changes that we needed to do, but might that be another way to garner additional residential units within our existing land supply that we have? Next slide, Sue. So this is the time for discussion. So Sue, if you could close the PowerPoint, please.
All righty, folks, let's start with questions first, probably. Or any clarification that you might need. So Doug, just so that, oh, go ahead, Mike.
So Doug, the land over around the hospital, how, I was looking at the map and I was trying to decide where the bypass is supposed to go through there. How much land is maybe available over there that not only could be used for medical, but maybe even some light industrial? Is there more flat land there before it starts to go up the hill than what we're currently seeing? And that's probably outside the urban growth boundary.
So, Councilor, the bypass, ODOT, so that's why I have one of those maps in there. ODOT bought one lot at the end of Harmony Lane that was in the corridor of the bypass. Then there's a portion of Providence's property behind the new medical office building that is within the corridor of the bypass. Everything else, but that property behind is not within an urban reserve area. So it's the area from Highway 99 to the end of the roads for both Clemic and Harmony, and then the lots on either side. It's not a super large area. For industry, might be a little bit in there that might work, but you've got a lot of highly parcelized, there's lots of lots in there off of both of those particular roadways. And so, it's a time of, somebody have a vacant parcel they want to sell. And that's that whole issue of land assemblage. There may be better locations to put industry. Do you want truck traffic, on Providence Drive going by the hospital where we have pedestrians crossing from the main hospital campus over to the medical office building that was just constructed. And part of this is the reason I brought up the whole issue of medical nodes is past experience of having hospitals. And as I think I mentioned in one of our previous conversations, as the population continues to grow and the population continues to age, is that there's going to be more need for medical services. And should we be considering that now? Not thinking about it 15 years from now, but trying to plan ahead or think ahead of how we might address that need. And so can you create kind of that health services node, so to speak, that's kind of anchored by Providence at this point in time? Because we do have the Oregon Clinic behind, we've got Friendsview, we've got Astor House, we've got Marquee, we've got the memory care facilities that all kind of exist in that kind of same general proximity.
Other questions for Doug to get us started? Okay, Doug, as I recall, you started us off with 6 questions. And why don't we, I don't know what order, but why don't we go backwards? Why don't we start with any of the efficiency measures? Do you want feedback on each individual one, or what would you like there?
What I'm looking for are, out of that list of 13, are there any of that 13 that as a collective, you don't need to vote on it, should I be considering if you direct me to initiate a UGB expansion? Because that's one of the things I have to do, is I have to look, what can we do to be more efficient with the land we already have?
Right. Which I understand would also, it would improve our argument as to why a UGB expansion is needed.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Denise.
I do want to say, I have big question marks around the rabbit hole comment. When we talk about affordable housing, there's a range, right? People want to live in apartments or have to live in apartments. People want to buy a house. We have some expensive housing, and the only way that people will ever have a chance to own a house here is if we look at housing differently. And I think it's a little disconnected from reality to say that people don't want to live in a rabbit hole, because many people I know who are younger, who want to start out, they don't want the big yard. They don't want the big house. They don't want, what they want is to own something somewhere. And they'd like to stay here. And even someone like my son, who has a great job, he's 20 years old. He doesn't want this huge house. So just because we as older adults are more settled and, you know, maybe we can buy a house, but that doesn't mean that other people want the same things we want. And I want to, first, I'm having flashbacks of having to do the UGB again, because I was here last time. And it was a terrible, terrible situation. And I think I'm still shaking. But also, you know, just this idea of, I don't want to live next to you because you can't afford a house like me. I just find that so dehumanizing as a, you know, for me. And I needed to get that off my chest. It really bothered me.
And Counselor, I think on that one, part of this goes back when we were doing, when we had the Newberg 2030 program, we did some survey work, which gets to the issue about lot size. And though it was not a scientifically valid survey, it gave us a temperature of what the community members were thinking basically back in 2016. And that was, our lot sizes were already small enough. In 2010, we'd gone from 7,500 down to 5,000 for our LDR. We went from 5,000 to 3,000 in our MDR area. And the community says, you know, that's small enough. But at the same time, if you read through our HNA, we have to provide housing for all income levels and all ages. And so we even have the graphics in there that talk about, you know, starting off young families living in apartments, or parents living in an apartment, having kids, moving up, moving in through that, and then downsizing again. And then, of course, there's those cross things that can happen, you know, given circumstances in life. And so, at least from your staff's perspective, is we need to provide housing for all types and all income levels. Part of the middle housing is addressing some of that.
Stephanie.
I'm just looking at this list, and for me, I'm looking at number 1 and number 10, increasing the structure height and then also establishing minimum density standards and evaluating those. And I'm kind of thinking those for me would be interesting to talk about, because I think we are in that area where we need to sort of balance between going up and going out. And so I think if we can start talking about how we can go up in some places, then we can, you know, it's the age old like sprawl versus density kind of thing. But I certainly think that addressing density in that way for me would be interesting, because I think we can see some going up, sort of eliminating some of those things. And when we go up, we're looking at smaller units, like Denise was talking about, more like apartment or condo, that kind of living that gets more people, some smaller housing that's more affordable. So for me, those would be interesting things to add into the list.
Other comments, folks? Elise.
I have similar interests of what Stephanie just mentioned. And then also, I obviously am really interested in 11 and just maybe even more, some more creativity around that. And just given how many church lots that we have and religious institution properties we have within the city. And if there is in the future ever any interest in that becoming housing, I think that would be super important for us to discuss and be ready for. And then also, just for my lack of, I'll ask a question that I probably should know the answer. Could you explain 13 a little bit more?
So currently we have a provision in our regulations that if we call it an efficiency dwelling unit. So if you were an efficiency dwelling unit, let's say you bought a lot, you didn't want a bigger house, but I wanted to build a house sort of akin to a tiny home, but not a tiny home, but it was 500 square feet or less. You pay a reduced SDC for transportation, and water will probably be the same because you need a three-quarter inch meter, but your fixture units in that housing type would be less than in a typical house. So some community members have approached me and said, what if we increase that efficiency dwelling unit size to 800 square feet? And then we'd have to look at the SDC calculations, and council's already in those discussions. But that might be a way when we're talking about, Councilor Bacon was talking about smaller housing sizes and, the younger populations looking for a different type of, maybe an 800 square foot house. And I think some of you have heard me talk, I've talked with the developers, why can't we build that 800 to 1200 square foot house? I think some of you heard me say, that's the size house I grew up in. I live in a 1200 square foot house now. And it's perfectly fine. And so can we put together tools that would allow that type of housing product to be developed, but not charge it at a full price of what you would do with a typical house that we see in the market today of 1300 to 2400 square feet? That help?
Okay. Yep, I'm interested in that as well.
All right, Denise.
That I was going to add 13 too. So,
Okay, Mike.
So I like the idea of us looking at maybe as an experiment, a cluster type of small development that would be 900 square feet to maybe 1,000 at the most. That would be your entry level for single young men or young ladies or married couples that they want to have something that's going to gain value instead of just renting. And we could design it to where it's really kind of unique. I'd like to see something like that and see how would that work. And maybe it would really catch on and we'd get a lot of people that are interested in it. I'm not really interested in going up, 4 or 5 stories. I don't want to go in that direction, but I really would like us to look at something like the 900 to maybe 1,000 at the most square foot, because that also gives the opportunity for people that are downsizing when they're retiring. That's perfect size maybe for them.
And
Council,
about cottages before.
Yeah, so as we were working through the middle housing in one of the last presentations we gave the council in June, is we'll be back in the fall to address the issue about triplexes, quadplexes, cottage clusters, which I think Councilor McBride is talking about, and townhomes. So the cottage clusters could be the footprint could be no larger than 900 square feet, but you can have a second floor, so you can go to 18. So that kind of gets, Councilor, to your piece about that 900 square foot. So developer might come in and build a cottage cluster of 900 square foot homes, or they might have a partial second floor and it might end up as 1,100 square feet. So we will be working on that. We've already got the draft regulations, but that'll be coming back to you hopefully in December of 2021.
All right, anything else?
I do want to emphasize, I don't know how we can, I understand Mike's concern around, density and stories, but I'm not sure how we can really approach this without addressing number 1.
All right, other comments, folks? All right, well, this is the time when I have to say that my day job is with Newberg Area Habitat for Humanity, so housing is something that I do, so I need to make that notice. Again, I think, on the question of height, right? I think we immediately think about height adjacent to residential areas, and that becomes the concern. But if you think about areas out by like Providence, where 5 or 6 stories wouldn't be a problem, except for maybe the airport, flyover zone. But that would be something would be a very good use, in my opinion, of that land. Downtown too, we've seen where we could do 3 stories, 4 stories, or 5 stories wouldn't necessarily bother me. So that's my thing. So agree with that. I love the idea of efficiency units, and smaller potentially, as we've heard before. We have no studio apartments to speak of in Newberg. So that might be something. Housing on religious institution property, yes, for sure. I know there's a lot of churches in town that have a lot of land and are interested in doing something. Minimum density standards, I think somebody mentioned that. I would like to see it, because one of the things I think we've learned, and Doug can elaborate on this, is we set density targets, but we rarely meet them because we don't set minimums. And so this is the kind of thing I think would be worth looking at. The only other one that I have is that is short-term rental regulations. I think that it's inevitable that I'm not saying they need to be enacted anytime soon, but I think we should have a good amount of work done to know our options. The final one, which is probably the thorniest of them all, Doug, and I'm sorry, and that's road standards. But I'd be remiss with my civil engineer friends if I did not mention road standards. So my apologies.
I was going to say Leonard's singing right now.
Exactly. Shout out to Leonard Rydell if you're listening, Mr. Rydell, and other civil engineers in town. So, anyway, those are the ones that would be of interest to me. Now, do you need more than that, Doug? Or
that gives me a great envelope to work with on efficiency measures. And so I would suggest, Mayor, if we maybe go back, and I'll just kind of reiterate this, is
okay.
One is the question: do you want staff to initiate a UGB process with DLCD?
Question, folks. Any questions for Doug before we've got nods, but okay, Doug, I'm going to ask, and then this may be an unfair question, I apologize, but between exception lands, reserve lands, landslide areas, hilly areas, and the river, do we have any land to expand into?
That's what the process will evaluate, Mayor.
Going to try to get you to, yeah, you're too crafty for that. All right, you are right. Yes.
I'm not predetermining what the answer is. We have to go. There is a very lockstep process and evaluation that has to be done. And I would encourage you all to go through that process. And I know Council Vega said it was painful. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but I caution, if you try to predetermine where things should go, is that's when things start to go awry. Let the analysis drive, let the data and the analysis drive what those answers may be.
Fair enough. All right. Any questions or comments on whether or not we should pursue a UGB expansion? No vote required. I think you're just looking for thumbs up, right?
Yep. Shaking of heads, thumbs up,
okay, thumbs up,
whatever it may be. I'm kind of seeing a yes.
Okay. I think we got nods all around. All right.
Question number 2, and I'm going to take questions number 2, 3, 4, and 5 and roll them all together. Mm-hmm. By initiating a UGB expansion, do you want staff to initiate the process to amend the comprehensive plan for the HNA, the EOA, the public, semi-public, and all the tables and charts under Chapter 5 of the comp plan, and then officially adopt the HNA, EOA, and the public, semi-public?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I'm hearing a yes on that.
We got nods and thumbs up. Yep.
So where we just went through the process where I brought something forward to you. So I'm going to read the motion that I wrote that will memorialize what we just talked about. And so that is, and somebody could say this is, I motion that the City Council direct staff to initiate the process to amend the urban growth boundary and direct staff to prepare a comprehensive plan and development code amendments to adopt the housing needs analysis, EOA, and the public and semi-public. That way I have a motion, it's in record, and I don't have to bring back another staff report to you at the next meeting and say, please initiate all this.
All right. Somebody want to make that motion? And you don't have to do it verbatim. So there you go.
I had it pulled up if you want me to try.
Yep, do it.
So I want to say what Doug just said, but let's see. So I motion that City Council direct staff to initiate the the process to amend the urban growth boundary and direct staff to prepare comprehensive plan and development code amendments to adopt the housing needs analysis, economic opportunities analysis, and public, semi-public land needs analysis. And Lincoln agrees.
Thank you.
And a second?
I'll second that and
All
say
right, Denise.
that's amazing that you could do that even with someone yelling on your lap.
There are the challenges of motherhood right there. It's seen live. All right. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor signify by raising your left hands. And that's unanimous, Sue. All righty. What about?
Thank you all. I appreciate it very much.
Okay. You got enough on the efficiency measures? You're okay?
I've got a great running start now.
Cool. All right, Doug. Well, thank you very kindly. All right, next item, I think, okay, this is item 8D. We added this, as you will recall, from the work session, and this is involving the fireworks ban. Who might like to start the discussion? I mean, you could even start it with a motion if you are so moved.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
as recommended by our fine captain, correct?
Yep.
Ferguson,
Captain Ferguson and Chief.
right?
Kennedy.
And
Yeah.
Chief Kennedy, I would like to recommend that we extend the firework ban until further notice, with the exception of professional firework displays as approved, authorized by fire inspection.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and Jules with a second, Elise with the motion. All right. Yes, sir, James.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to recommend to the council, and with respect to extension of the fireworks ban, during the last meeting, we discussed the advantages of, if the council wants to have a ban in place, also having the declaration of the state of emergency in place to supplement that ban. So right now, the way, kind of a snapshot of where we stand at this point, is that the declaration of the state of emergency is set to expire August 1. The ban is set to expire today. So we'll want to be specific if the choice is made to expand or to extend the ban. We'll want to set the date to which that ban runs through. So if we wanted to align with the August 1st declaration that's already in place, if we want to push both out to a future date, it would be my recommendation to the council that we extend to a specific date if the council chooses to do that extension.
Would you like to amend your motion, Elise?
Yes, I would like to amend my motion. So further notice doesn't count. I don't know fire season super well. Should we say September 1st? I think that's too early probably, but October 1st.
I think that this is if I may, Mr. Mayor, I think that this is a good item to discuss, maybe just to provide a little bit of context. I'm not seeing, similar to Chief Kennedy, I'm not seeing a lot of extensions from cities. West Lynn did just extend theirs, but they extended it last week and they extended it to today. So what they're going to do next is a bit up in the air. I will say that as a good practice when extending, it's always nice to have the coverage of the state when it comes to declaring emergencies, because if the state's got an emergency, declaring at the local level under the state provides some coverage.
Okay, I amend my motion to August 1st. That's when the state of emergency is, right?
So the local declaration of state of emergency goes to August 1st. The state's state of emergency that was put in place by the governor goes until November 1st.
Oh my God.
To add to the complexity, right? So so I think that the decision is ultimately, you can take the ban and extend it just to August 1st and let that sit there, or we could take the ban and the the declaration of state of emergency and extend it to a future date. My recommendation would be if you extend it, let's not get in front of the state and go beyond November 1.
Totally.
All right, Stephanie.
I was just going to say that my recommendation would be that we go to September 7th, because that gets us through that another holiday weekend, which sometimes can be an issue, but it also gets us to another council date so that if we want to discuss it further, we could do that. So it covers sort of first day of school and all that kind of stuff, but it also comes before us again. That was just my thought about a good time.
And I know when I was going back to school, the first thing I thought of was blowing off fireworks to celebrate returning to school. I know that was my way of looking at it, but anyway, sorry about that. But all right, Elise, are you okay with Stephanie's suggested date?
Yeah, I guess I kind of just feel like it should be extended through the state's emergency order. I mean, of November 1, and just call it good and not have a discussion again. But
I agree, because fire season does go that long. That's why she set that date. I mean, some of the fires started last year in September, so.
I know.
Yeah. All right. So why don't you, could you amend your motion, Elise?
Yes, I would like to amend my motion to extend our emergency order as well as our ban on fireworks through November 1st.
Good. And do we have a second to this amended motion?
Second.
Okay, and Jules with a second, Sue. All right, any further discussion? Okay.
And that
Sue?
I was
sorry.
just going to ask, that includes the exception of like the professional fireworks too, still, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll try to restate. So we are putting in both, and we're extending the emergency declaration. We are extending the fireworks ban until November 1st to mirror what is the state's emergency at this moment, but that does not cover professional fireworks programs that are overseen by other authorities. Okay.
I like that.
Okay. Everybody good? All right. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor signify by raising your left hands. It looks like we're all opposed. Same sign. Okay. Mike opposed and the others in favor. Motion passes. All right. Let's see. Any other council business, council committee reports, anything that's going on otherwise? Okay, not seeing anything. It looks like the next item is actually executive session. And allow me to find my cheat sheet. Where is it? All right, I will now read the announcement required to hold an executive session. After the announcement, the Zoom meeting will terminate and the council will enter into a separate Zoom meeting not open to the public. The city council will now meet in executive session for the purpose of deliberation with persons designated by the governing body to conduct a performance evaluation of a public official. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192-662I. Representatives of the news media and designated staff and other persons will be allowed to attend the executive session. No decision will be made in this executive session. At the end of the executive session, the council meeting will adjourn and we will not return to open session. We'll now terminate the public Zoom meeting and begin the executive session. And Sue should have sent to everybody. Okay, so she did. So Sue clarified the exec session is only for Stephanie, Rick, and Larry Blake, and Kezia will be the host. So all of you other lucky ducks are out of here. Have a good evening and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, folks. Thank you.